what is the inverted yield curve? What does that mean?
So an inverted yield curve is when the short end of the duration pays a higher rate than the long end.
Okay.
Normal yield curve is the longer you let someone have your money, the more money they have to pay you.
Yes.
So an inverted yield curve basically means, hey, I'm not willing to tie up money for the long term because I'm very suspect as to what the near-term direction of the economy is.
Okay. And so how many times has this happened?
I have
since 1950. You remember?
I want to say, and I'm completely spitballing because I was actually going to look this up today before our conversation. But I remember reading at one point.
I want people to understand. Jeff is doing this all off the top of his head. He did no research.
I did none. I want to say it's happened like 11 times since 1945, or something like that. And I think it's resulted in a recession like 9 of the 11 or something. But I could be way off on that. Yeah. But I do know it's a highly, highly, highly indicative of a coming recession because basically it's telling you that the market at the end of the day is made up of millions and millions of individuals and millions of businesses, institutions, all giving their best guess to what something is worth. And if everybody's kind of saying, I'm willing to put a lot more money on the short term than I am on the long term, that tells you people are concerned about locking their money up now because they're not sure what the environment's going to look like.
Gotcha.
Right? And so it's an interesting, it is a non-normal course of events.
Yeah.
And it would be equivalent to, you have an 800 credit score, I'm going to give you a credit card at 20%. You got a 400 credit score, I'm going to give you a credit card at 0, right? That doesn't make sense. And so it is a canary in the coal mine that at a 100,000 foot level, our economy is not working as it normally does.
And the double problem to this is the fact that they have interest rates never went back up.
Correct.
And so they can't just start cutting interest rates again. Well, they're doing it, but they're getting to the point where you can't do it anymore.
So for example, when the Fed started, and I don't really remember, but like, for example, I remember when a buddy of mine, I want to say it was 2006, got a mortgage at like 6 1/4. And I was like, dude, who did you have to bribe?
Yeah.
Right? Well, we've cut rate, I don't know what the Fed fund rate was before the financial crisis, but let's just call it 4% or 3.5%, whatever it was. Then we cut it all the way down to 0, and then we started to come back. But there's a massive difference between a 6% mortgage and a 4% mortgage.
Yeah.
Not nearly as great a difference between a 4% mortgage and a 3.3% mortgage. In other words, if you can't afford a house at 4%, you probably can't afford the house at 3.5%.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So the concern about the rates having not normalized sooner, which is what the Fed should have done, is probably start in 2000. As soon as we were really out of are people going to run on bank level crisis? So probably 2012, 2013, they probably should have raised a 1/4 point.
You're not supposed to hit the desk, man.
Oh, sorry, a 1/4 point every 6 months or every 9 months, and let it be just kind of a known thing. And if they'd done that, we would have back to normal rates. So they would have, and people were probably back to 5.5% mortgages, 6% mortgages. That would have taken some of the steam out of the market a little bit. It would have taken some of the steam out of the real estate market for sure. But on the flip side, when you cut rates from that point, it's enough of a difference to incentivize people to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, if I don't really shop ever at all, but it's sort of like, I remember when I first got married, my wife loved Kohl's because it was like you could go on a certain days, and it was like, she'd come back and she'd go, I spent $220, but when I left, it was only, $61 because it was an 80% rack that was 40% off the 80%. That was, buy one, get one free. I mean, she just loved that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but you realize I just marked it up 40% and 80%. It's all BS, right?
Yeah.
But she doesn't do that anymore. But my point is the psychology of the rate difference right now is very minimal. And basically everybody that can kind of refinance probably has.
Yeah.
There was a 37% spike last week. I did read that today.
Yeah, well, no, we're experiencing it in the tile company. Right. We're seeing it.
So if you refinanced 4 or 5 years ago and you're financed at 4.5%, sure, refinance at 3. I mean, that's a great move, right? And if you do, win him group title. But in general, I don't think it's enough to make things work. I mean, again, it's sort of like if you had somebody who was struggling with debt, and they came to me and said, "I've got all this credit card debt and I can barely make my minimum payments," and I said, "Well, what's your average rate on your cards?" "Oh gosh, it's 3%.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice? But it's 3%. Yeah. If I look at the person and go, "Got great news for you. I got the credit card companies negotiated down. Now you're only paying 2.5%. Doesn't really change the game because your problem is the minimum payments, right?